What if everything you were told about fat was completely wrong? Not slightly outdated, not a little off, completely institutionally demonstrably backwards. For decades, you were handed one story. Fat makes you fat, butter destroys your heart, eggs will kill you slowly, and those clear plastic bottles of vegetable oil on every grocery shelf, those were the safe ones, the smart ones, the heart-healthy choice. Your doctor nodded at them. Your government subsidized them. Food companies stamped golden approval seals right on the label. Most people believed it. Why wouldn't you? The message came from every direction at once, all saying the same thing. But here is what nobody told you while you were making those swaps. Something was quietly happening inside your body at the cellular level. It was slow. It was silent. It was cumulative. And by the time researchers started connecting the dots, the damage had already become the new normal. Then in 2025, scientists in Italy published a study that genuinely stopped people in their tracks. They tracked over 16,000 adults. They looked at what those people ate every day, how they cooked, which fats they reached for. Then they measured their waistlines carefully. What they found was not a small statistical blip buried in a footnote. It was a striking, undeniable 4-inch difference in waist size. One specific group of people consumed one particular fat almost every single day. Their waistlines were 4 inches smaller than the others. Not from medication, not from a structured calorie plan, not from hours of weekly exercise, from one single ingredient swap in the kitchen. And here's the part that should make you pause. The people with the worst waistlines were using the oils their doctors recommended, the oils sitting in the heart-healthy aisle, the ones with the approvals and the certifications and the friendly green labels, those exact oils. So in this lesson, we are going to break down what those oils are actually doing inside your body every single day. We will look at why one fat works so differently at a biological level. We will walk through what multiple major studies actually found, and we will cover the one critical mistake most people make when they try to switch. The mistake that quietly cancels out every single benefit. Once you understand what is actually happening inside your cells, you will never look at your kitchen the same way again. Before we talk about the fat that won, we need to talk honestly about the ones that lost. You cannot appreciate the solution without understanding the damage first. The biggest problem is hiding in plain sight right now. It is inside roughly 80% of the processed food supply across the United States. It is in your salad dressing, your granola bar, your protein snack, your restaurant meal, your so-called healthy cooking oil at home. It is called seed oil, and it goes by many names that you probably recognize from ingredient labels you have read 100 times. Soybean oil, canola oil, rapeseed oil, cottonseed oil, sunflower oil, safflower oil, rice bran oil, and the catch-all name, vegetable oil. That last name, vegetable oil, is one of the most effective pieces of marketing in the entire history of the food industry. It sounds like it came from a garden, something fresh, something natural, something your grandmother might have recognized and trusted. It did not come from a garden. It came from an industrial chemical extraction process that did not even exist 100 years ago. Here is a number worth sitting with. According to the American Journal of Clinical Nutrition, soybean oil consumption in America increased over 1,000-fold between 1909 and 1999. 1,000 times more in 90 years. The researchers who documented that did not use mild language to describe what they found. They called it, in their exact words, the most striking modification of the United States food supply during the entire 20th century. Not fast food, not artificial sweeteners, not processed snacks. The single most dramatic shift was the mass adoption of soybean oil, and the reason that statistic matters so much comes entirely down to chemistry happening inside your body right now. Soybean oil is approximately 55% linoleic acid. Linoleic acid is what scientists classify as an omega-6 fatty acid. In small amounts, it is fine. Your body actually needs omega-6 fats. The problem is not their existence. The problem is the completely unnatural quantity you are now consuming daily. A systematic review in the journal Advances in Nutrition examined linoleic acid stored in American body fat over the last 50 years. What they found was deeply unsettling. The amount of linoleic acid stored inside human fat tissue had more than doubled in 5 decades. Your body is being built with fundamentally different materials than your grandparents were. Your fat cells, your cell membranes, your brain tissue, all different. They are being constructed from a fat that humans never consumed consumed in these quantities at any point in recorded history until now. Here is why that is a biological crisis and not just a dietary footnote worth ignoring. The ratio of omega-3 to omega-6 fats matters enormously. In traditional human populations eating natural, unprocessed diets, that ratio sat close to 1-to-1, balanced, the way human biology evolved to function. Today, in the average American body, that ratio sits at approximately 20-to-1. 20 omega-6 molecules for every single omega-3 molecule inside you. That is not a minor imbalance that your body quietly corrects. That is a system running in a permanent state of chronic low-grade inflammation. And inflammation is not an abstract medical term doctors use in clinical settings. It is the operating condition driving your most serious health problems right now. It is behind heart disease, behind insulin resistance, behind neurodegenerative diseases like Alzheimer's and Parkinson's, behind stubborn belly fat that simply refuses to move. That abdominal fat is not a cosmetic issue. It is a visible symptom of deep systemic metabolic dysfunction happening inside your body daily, and these oils are one of the central driving forces behind it. But the story gets even worse before we reach the solution. These oils do not simply sit passively inside your cells causing inflammation. They oxidize, they react with heat, they break apart into something far more dangerous. When the polyunsaturated fats in seed oils are exposed to cooking heat, they produce toxic compounds called aldehydes. Aldehydes are carcinogenic. They belong to the same class of toxic compounds found inside cigarette smoke. The comparison is not casual. It is based on direct laboratory testing. A toxicologist named Dr. Martin Grootveld examined French fries cooked in seed oils and measured the toxic byproducts produced during the frying process carefully. His finding was extraordinary. The aldehyde load from 25 servings of seed oil French fries was roughly equivalent to smoking 25 cigarettes directly. You may have never touched a cigarette in your life. You may have made every conscious effort to protect yourself from that kind of exposure. But if you have been cooking with seed oils daily, eating at restaurants using them, buying packaged foods containing them, you have been receiving that load anyway. Nobody told you. Nobody put that comparison on the label next to the heart healthy stamp. It was never part of the public conversation. And the most painful part of this story is what we were told to do instead. We were told these oils protected us. We were told to throw out the butter our grandmothers cooked everything in, to replace beef tallow and lard with clear plastic bottles of processed liquid. Some of these oils carry formal certifications from major health organizations. They appear in official dietary guidelines. Hospitals use them. Health restaurants promote them. It was a lie built on flawed science, financial incentives, and decades of institutions too committed to a position to reverse it publicly. The populations who followed that advice faithfully are now living measurably with the metabolic consequences of trusting the wrong guidance for too long. Now let us go back to the Italian study properly, because most people who mention it only reference the headline number without explaining what actually happened. The study was published in Frontiers in Nutrition in September 2025. The lead researchers were Matas and colleagues working with a large population dataset. They tracked over 16,000 adults and measured not just what people ate, but how closely their patterns matched traditional Mediterranean dietary habits overall. They used a standardized scoring system called CMDS to measure Mediterranean diet adherence and cross-referenced everything with waist circumference and metabolic markers. What they found was not one isolated result. It was a spectrum, a complete story told across 4 clearly different groups of real people. The first group was the low-fat dieters. These were the rule followers, the people who did everything the old guidelines told them to do. Margarine instead of butter, skim everything, fat-free dressings, reduced fat versions of every product available. They applied the dietary guidelines faithfully and completely. Their results were not just poor, they were among the absolute worst outcomes in the entire study across every single measurement taken. Higher BMI, larger waist circumference, more persistent hunger and cravings throughout the day, elevated inflammatory markers, disrupted hormone levels across the board. The low-fat paradigm that shaped American kitchens for 40 years did not just fail to help. Its timeline of adoption matches the rise of modern obesity exactly. The second group was the heavy seed oil users, people cooking everything in canola, buying the large cheap jugs labeled vegetable oil without questioning it. Their inflammatory markers were elevated across every measure, and their waist circumference was the single worst outcome of any group in the entire study. The average waistline in this group measured 99.4 centimeters. That is nearly 39 inches around the middle, from the oil they cooked with daily. The third group was moderate and varied fat eaters. Some butter, some olive oil, a mixture of different things depending on what was available. Better results than the seed oil group, but nothing particularly notable. They sat in the middle of the distribution across every category measured. Then came the fourth group. These participants consumed extra virgin olive oil consistently, roughly 6 days per week, approximately 2 tablespoons per day. Nothing more dramatic than that. Same country as all the others. Same general age range. Same reported physical activity levels. The only meaningful difference was which fat they poured daily. Their average waist circumference measured 89.1 centimeters, approximately 35 inches, over 4 inches smaller than the seed oil group sitting right beside them in the data. When researchers ran full statistical controls, adjusting for age, sex, total diet quality, exercise, and every other variable they could identify, the finding held completely firm. People who did not consume extra virgin olive oil regularly had a 5.1 times higher odds of being classified as abdominally obese. That is a 5.1 odds ratio. That is not a marginal statistical finding. That is the kind of number that makes researchers double check their own calculations before they submit for publication. The fat that produced those results was extra virgin olive oil. And before you assume you already know this story, stay with me through the mechanism, because the mechanism is not what most people think it is, and the mechanism is what makes this genuinely different from every other nutrition claim you have heard. Extra virgin olive oil is not really an oil in the industrial sense of that word. It is a fruit juice pressed directly from a fresh olive. Olives are fruits. When you cold press a fresh olive, you get a liquid carrying not just fat, but hundreds of bioactive compounds found nowhere else on Earth. Nothing is added, nothing is removed, no chemical solvents, no bleaching, no deodorizing processes. This is exactly how humans have made it for thousands of years, and it produces something your body recognizes and responds to in ways that no industrially processed oil can come close to replicating biochemically. There are 3 specific components inside high-quality extra virgin olive oil responsible for what the research keeps finding across every major study. The first is oleic acid. It is a monounsaturated fatty acid, making up approximately 70% of extra virgin olive oil by total composition. When you consume oleic acid, your small intestine produces a signaling molecule called oleoethanolamide, also known as OEA. This molecule travels directly to your brain. OEA activates specific receptors that regulate satiety. In the most literal biological sense, it is your body's own natural fullness signal being properly triggered. This is why people who use extra virgin olive oil consistently tend to eat less without consciously restricting themselves or counting a single calorie deliberately. They are not exercising extra willpower or fighting harder against hunger. Their hunger signaling system is simply functioning the way it was biologically designed to function. The oil is communicating with their biology in a language the body actually understands and responds to correctly. That is a fundamental difference. The second component is polyphenols. A genuinely high-quality extra virgin olive oil contains hundreds of distinct polyphenolic compounds working together inside your system. These are plant-derived antioxidants that protect your cells from oxidative damage. They reduce systemic inflammation throughout the body at a cellular level continuously. They also protect your mitochondria. Those are the energy-producing structures inside every cell you have. Think of them as the power plants running your metabolism daily. Polyphenols act like a rust-proof coating applied from the inside, the same way you would rust-proof metal to stop it degrading over time under pressure. Every time you consume high polyphenol olive oil, those compounds are performing that continuous protective function throughout your entire cellular system. That protection accumulates meaningfully over time. The third compound is where this story becomes genuinely remarkable. It is called oleocanthal, and the way it was discovered deserves to be told properly. In 2005, a biologist named Gary Beauchamp was visiting an olive press in Sicily. He was tasting freshly pressed oils, as researchers in that field often do. He noticed something completely unexpected: a sharp, peppery burn in the back of his throat. Not a flavor note, a distinct physical sensation, a real sting. Beauchamp recognized that sensation immediately, not because of food science training, but because years earlier he had conducted specific research on liquid ibuprofen. Ibuprofen, when swallowed as a liquid, produces the exact same sensation in the back of the throat. Same burn, same location, same unmistakable physical character. He went back to his laboratory and investigated. What he found changed how researchers think about olive oil forever. Oleocanthal, naturally present in fresh, high-quality extra virgin olive oil, inhibits the exact same enzymes that ibuprofen inhibits. Those are COX-1 and COX-2 enzymes. These enzymes sit at the center of the entire human inflammatory cascade. Ibuprofen is one of the most widely used drugs on earth precisely because it blocks them. Oleocanthal does the exact same thing through the exact same biological pathway, naturally, without a prescription, inside a food that has existed for thousands of years. Beauchamp published his findings in the journal Nature. He calculated that approximately 50 grams of high-quality extra virgin olive oil per day delivers meaningful anti-inflammatory effect. That is roughly 3.5 tablespoons, and the anti-inflammatory equivalent produced is comparable to a standard daily dose of ibuprofen taken consistently. Your kitchen, stocked correctly, contains a natural compound operating on the same biochemical anti-inflammatory pathway as one of the most prescribed drugs in the world, without the gastrointestinal damage that comes with long-term NSAID use, without the kidney stress, without the liver burden that accumulates over years of regular use. It is not a supplement, it is not a pill, it is olive oil. And the research supporting it does not stop at one Italian study. The largest randomized controlled trial ever conducted on the Mediterranean diet is called the Pre-Dimed trial. It tracked over 7,000 high-risk adults across Spain. They were followed for nearly 5 years. The results were published in the New England Journal of Medicine, one of the most rigorously peer-reviewed journals in existence. Participants who added extra virgin olive oil to their diet between 2 and 4 tablespoons daily experienced approximately a 30% reduction in major cardiovascular events. That means heart attacks, strokes, and cardiovascular death. 30% lower risk from food. That is a magnitude you normally see attached to pharmaceutical clinical trials. In 2022, Harvard researchers tracked approximately 92,000 American adults over 28 years and published findings in the Journal of the American College of Cardiology. People consuming more than half a tablespoon of olive oil daily showed a 19% lower risk of cardiovascular death and a 17% lower risk of cancer death. They also showed a 29% lower risk of dying from neurodegenerative diseases like Alzheimer's and Parkinson's, and an 18% lower risk of respiratory disease death. That is not a benefit limited to one system. That is a body-wide protective effect across every major category of mortality that modern medicine tracks seriously. From half a tablespoon per day, consumed consistently, over time. That is the entire intervention producing those numbers across 92,000 people over nearly 3 decades. In separate substitution research, scientists modeled what happens if Americans simply swap 10 grams per day of margarine, butter, or mayonnaise for olive oil. Risk of death dropped between 8% and 34%, depending on which fat was replaced. Not from a complete dietary overhaul, from one small daily substitution. And then there is the population evidence, not a controlled trial lasting a few years. Centuries of observational data written directly into actual human lifespans around the world. The populations who have consumed extra virgin olive oil the longest consistently produce some of the highest concentrations of people living past 100 on Earth. Sardinia, rural Greece, southern Spain, and Sicily are the original blue zones, regions where researchers studying extreme human longevity keep returning because the results keep repeating reliably. In Sardinia, olive oil is not a health trend anyone read about online. It is poured directly onto bread, added to bean soups without measuring it carefully. It is used the way other cultures use water when cooking. It is not a supplement they take. It is simply the food they have always eaten. They are living proof of exactly what the controlled research keeps confirming. The biology and the populations are pointing in the exact same direction. Here is where most people make their critical mistake. They hear all of this, decide to buy olive oil, and assume the problem is solved completely. The problem is not solved, because olive oil is one of the most adulterated foods on the entire global market. That is a documented fact, not speculation. Studies from the University of California, Davis and investigations by the National Consumer Consumers League found a significant percentage of olive oil sold in American stores failed to qualify as extra virgin. Some are diluted with cheaper seed oils. Some come from lower grade olives that should never legally carry the extra virgin label under proper regulatory standards. Some are old enough that the polyphenols have fully oxidized and degraded. The oil is nutritionally inert at that point, or worse, mildly rancid already. When the pre-dime trial, the Harvard research, and the Italian study reference extra virgin olive oil producing those results, they mean real extra virgin olive oil, oil that is genuinely high in polyphenols, pressed recently from healthy olives, stored and transported in a way that actually protects the bioactive compounds throughout. They are absolutely not referring to the clear plastic bottle sitting under fluorescent grocery store lighting for the past 8 months before you picked it up. That distinction changes everything. If you make the switch but purchase a degraded or adulterated product, you will not receive the results the research actually documents. So here's exactly what to look for when buying olive oil that will actually deliver the biological results the studies keep measuring in real populations. First, single origin. The bottle must tell you specifically where the olives were grown and pressed. One country, one region ideally. No blended sources listed together. When a label shows Italy, Spain, Australia, and Tunisia combined, that is a commercial blending operation. It is not a quality product worth your time or money. Second, dark glass packaging. Light is one of the primary forces that degrades olive oil and destroys the polyphenols responsible for every measurable benefit you just heard about. Plastic can also leach compounds into the oil sitting inside it. The correct container is a dark glass bottle, dark green or dark brown, blocking light completely. Third, 100% certified extra virgin. Not olive oil, not light olive oil, which is a refined product stripped of most beneficial compounds during processing. Extra virgin only. Fourth, harvest date visible on the bottle. Extra virgin olive oil does not improve with age like wine does. It degrades from the moment pressing occurs. Polyphenols and oleocanthal begin oxidizing immediately after pressing. You want the most recent harvest available, consumed within 12 to 18 months of that specific harvest date. If the bottle only shows an expiration date with no harvest date visible, the producer is not being transparent about actual freshness. That itself tells you something important. Fifth, the throat test. Once you have a bottle, do not just taste it. Take a tablespoon and actually drink it. Then wait 20 to 30 seconds carefully. A genuinely high polyphenol extra virgin olive oil produces a distinct peppery sting in the back of your throat, not a front of mouth flavor note, an actual burn. Some people cough slightly on the first attempt. That sensation is oleocanthal, activating the same receptors that liquid ibuprofen activates when swallowed. It is the anti-inflammatory compound announcing itself. If the oil goes down completely smooth with absolutely no sensation, that is a significant red flag telling you something critical about what you are holding. Either the polyphenol content is very low, the oil has aged past usefulness, or the product has been adulterated in some way before it reached you. Smooth and tasteless is not a premium product. It is an olive oil that has nothing meaningful left inside it to benefit your biology at all. One more thing needs addressing before we close, because it keeps stopping people from actually using this oil the way research shows it should be used. There is a persistent belief in cooking culture that extra virgin olive oil should never be used for high heat cooking because its smoke point is relatively moderate. This idea has sent millions of people back to the seed oils every single time they turn on a burner. It sounds scientific, it sounds chemistry based and credible, but it is based entirely on the wrong measurement. Smoke point, the temperature where oil visibly smokes, is not the relevant indicator of heat safety or harm. The relevant measurement is polar compound production. Polar compounds are toxic inflammatory molecules produced when fats chemically break down during heating on a stove. Researchers tested this directly. They heated seed oils, coconut oil, avocado oil, and extra virgin olive oil to real cooking temperatures and measured polar compounds carefully. The results surprised many people. Extra virgin olive oil, despite its moderate smoke point, produced the lowest polar compound levels of any oil tested in the study, even under prolonged frying conditions. The polyphenols inside the oil provide structural stability under heat. They protect against the oxidative breakdown that generates toxic compounds in other oils. Refined Linseed oils with the highest smoke points actually produce the most polar compounds under heat because they lack any polyphenol protection whatsoever during the process. This means extra virgin olive oil is not just safe for everyday cooking. By the measurement that actually matters, it is among the most stable cooking fats available. Cook your eggs in it, saute vegetables in it, roast with it, add it to your coffee if that works for you. The specific method matters less than daily consistency. Now let us step back from every specific detail for a moment, because the lesson here is genuinely larger than one oil, one study, or one ingredient swap. You were handed a story about fat that was not true. Fat itself was declared the enemy. Reducing it was called the responsible path to better health. Replacing natural traditional fats with industrial laboratory substitutes was called the smart modern choice. Entire generations restructured how they cooked around that single narrative completely. The outcomes, measured at the population level across decades, were not the ones the story promised anyone who followed its instructions faithfully and completely. The real problem was never fat. It was the specific type of fat and the enormous inflammatory load that came with consuming the wrong ones daily. Foods framed as dangerous, the ones containing natural traditional unprocessed fats, were often the foods that would have genuinely protected human health across generations. Foods marketed as heart-healthy modern replacements were, in many documented cases, the ones quietly driving the exact outcomes they claim to be preventing entirely. Your body does not just tolerate fat, it fundamentally requires it to function properly. 60% of your brain is fat. Your hormones are synthesized from cholesterol. Every single cell membrane in your entire body is constructed from fat. Fat is not the enemy of your biology. It is one of its most essential building materials. The question was never whether to eat fat. The question has always been which fats, in what form, from what source, consumed how consistently over time. The research points consistently toward one answer across different methodologies, different populations, and different decades of independently conducted scientific investigation worldwide. The fats humans have eaten the longest, pressed from fruits and rendered from naturally raised animals, are the ones the human body is best equipped to use effectively. The fats invented in industrial settings a century ago, extracted with solvents and chemically stabilized, are creating the metabolic dysfunction that has become background noise in modern life. Making this one swap is not a small lifestyle tweak. It is a biological recalibration. It is choosing to stop participating in an unannounced experiment conducted without your full knowledge. The 4 inches found in that Italian study did not come from restriction or suffering. They came from adding something that works with human biology instead of against it. That is not a complicated shift. It does not require counting anything. It does not require giving anything up. It requires one decision made consistently in your kitchen daily. And it starts with what you reach for when you cook. That is the entire intervention. One ingredient, one daily habit, one swap that your biology has been waiting for. If this changed how you see what is sitting in your pantry right now, share it with someone who deserves to know. They probably do.